isolating ourselves from global competitiveness. We don't have to look far to see why governance is the deciding factor. The Political Economy Digital Governance in Tanzania report that was launched earlier on this stage sets the framework and makes it more concrete. Tanzania has the connectivity, 85% we heard. Yet our ICT sector only contributes to about 1.5% of GDP. Our neighbors to the north, Kenya, with similar connectivity, get 2.4%. Connectivity alone clearly isn't translating into economic value. So the question we're going to try and grapple with today on the stage is, for AI in particular, it's simple, but really urgent, we feel. Do we repeat the pattern or do we break it? And we don't have to speculate about where Tanzania stands on AI, to be quite frank. We've already measured it. According to the 2025 UNESCO AI Readiness Assessment, which was launched in Dar es Salaam last June, co-authored by some of the colleagues you will meet today and tomorrow, and somebody who we have on our panel as well. The picture that we have really is a paradox. On the strong side, we have a Personal Data Protection Act already in force, mobile broadband reaching 83% of our population, and a place in the top 5 of Africa on the Global Cybersecurity Index. As we've heard from Dr. Moses, we have interoperability of systems. We value sovereignty, both on data and AI sovereignty. People can participate in the digital economy, not only as consumers, but producers and innovators. So we're not starting from zero. But on the readiness, in the same assessment, we find that 60% of Tanzanians still lack basic digital skills. R&D sits at around 0.5% of GDP, and the gap is sharply gendered. Women hold mobile internet access at 17%, against 35% for men, and just 4.4% of tertiary STEM enrollment, against 21.6% for men. Real strengths, real gaps, real opportunities, right? So this is how we're going to navigate the discussion. We have 2 experts who will join me on stage. I'm going to say rock stars because they are. We will start with somebody who's come a very long way from Washington to join us. Can we give a round of applause to Daniel Castro, please? Daniel, you get to pick your seat. Daniel Castro is the Vice President of the Information Technology and Innovation Foundation, AITF, an internationally recognized expert on AI regulation, cybersecurity, and global trade, and former IT analyst at the US Government Accountability Office. Joining Daniel on stage, we have engineer Bahati Zuberi. Can we give her a round of applause? Engineer Zuberi is the principal engineer at the Ministry of Communication and Information Technology. She's actively shaping the government's approach to ethical AI frameworks, cross-sector collaboration, and public engagement. These are some big chairs. Short people issues. So I'd like to jump in and kind of explore AI governance and frameworks, what protects our rights and institutions, and what can we do without smothering local innovation? Because I know we have innovators like Iko in the room for what this is something really at the heart of what they're trying to do. But also, what can we do to make the framework real? So I'd really like when we talk through kind of practicalities, what's tangible, what's doable for us. And at the heart of that, I think something we really need to discuss and drill down to is the skills. What are the skills we need to be able to get to the future that we want? We heard from Asha this morning, from the Charge d'Affaires, from Dr. Moses, that Tanzania isn't starting with a blank page. The ministry is already leading a draft national AI strategy that I believe, Engineer Zuberi, you're helping to shape and implement, that has been shaped by UNESCO ethics recommendations and the AU's continental strategy. We have a Data Protection Act in force, a Data Protection Commission. I believe we have somebody from the Commission here as well with us in the room, and that's up and running. So I think our question today is not whether to govern AI, it's the how fast, without losing the innovation that we really want to grow and the innovation we know we need to grow. So with that, let me ask, well, I'll start with you, Engineer Zuberi. Considering the projection that the digital governance could unlock up to $712 billion across the continent by 2050, could you walk us through where Tanzania is landing in that space? What is the framework trying to protect? Where are you drawing the line so that it doesn't smother innovation that we're trying to grow? And what are the efforts that you and the team are putting in to be able to, as Dr. Moses said this morning, build this thriving roadmap for us?
Good morning, everyone. I'm happy to join this panel. The topic is very critical for us as the ministry, and we really appreciate the effort done by my sister Asha to convene this forum, because for us it's a part of a space where we can learn and exchange the ideas, and also some of our colleagues here to know the progress that are being done by the government, but also to get the feedback from you guys, because as the ministry is the co-drive of digital transformation, but we cannot move digital transformation. It's a long journey. We need an intersectoral collaboration, and you're part of this journey. So I loved how you presented the issue of UNESCO AI Readiness Assessment Framework, and the report that was done by UNESCO really created a foundation for Tanzania to develop a national AI strategic framework. And what I remember, the AI community were the key champions driving the findings that were put in the report. For those who have not accessed the report is online. If you go to UNESCO website, you can find it. And through the UNESCO report, we as the government, we understood the maturity of where we Tanzania we are in terms of AI adoption. So the report showed that Tanzania we still in level 3. I remember the conversation we had with Daniel, and I said we are still a little bit low. So we are in level 3 of maturity, where we see a lot of innovation in the space, but we can still say they are experimental because each sector is doing its silo initiative in AI adoption. But coming back to the essence of this panel today, when we speak about the AI innovation, the government is visioning that the innovation should be driven with the focus to secure the data. People have to trust, but also they need to bring the major issue of inclusivity. How far are the public, are they engaged in the development of the AI, whether it's a system or any innovation? So through the UNESCO reports, there were several key concerns area which they real pushed us, the government, to look upon it. And one of the key area was the issue of infrastructure. Today, we are speaking of AI models, but how far are we ready in terms of infrastructure? So it was the government role to ensure that we have those infrastructure, whether it's a data centers, whether it's a government AI data center or it's a private-driven data center. We need to have adequate cloud infrastructure. But also there is the concept of open data sets for AI. Like for us, the government, we really originate or we really produce data, but are they available to innovators so that if they develop the AI modules, do they address what as the country we really need to address? Another issue, part of the data set, you know, Bakita, let's say now they're producing almost They have 64 million Swahili datasets, but they standardized. There are some of the universities also, they have the Swahili datasets, but how far are these datasets being standardized and accessible to any innovator or research institution? So as that is the vision of us, Tanzania, especially the vision that is driven by our ministry, is to see we leapfrog from the experimentation maturity now to be a country where AI really bring a transformation impact according to our social, economic needs, but without forgetting the values of Tanzanians. I can say a little.
Thank you so much, Engineer Zuberi, for laying the groundwork for what we're looking like in terms of internally. Daniel, once again, welcome back. Welcome to Tanzania for the first time. And what a welcome, right? You come in and we're launching a new report. You're meeting some incredible people in this room. And then we ask you to dig a little bit deeper. So from some of the work that you've been doing at the Institute and through kind of our conversation prior to this, you bring in the view that the protective instinct can quietly become the problem in the room, right? And this morning, Dr. Moses raised it when he talked about Fable 5. So we're here today to not just hear about the warnings. I think what we'd like to do is talk through opportunity, talk through what we can do next, what can we put into our roadmap. From what Bahati's described from the report and from what you've heard this morning from our speakers, where have you seen this done somewhere else? What would you keep? What's the learning for us? What can you push back on? Where have governments walked this path really well, and what positive aspects can Tanzania take from that learning?
Well, first, it's a real pleasure to be here, and I'm really excited to have this conversation with you and Engineer Bahati. When we look around the world at AI, and we recognize that just like the internet, just like mobile phones, just like social media, we are in the middle of another really significant technological change. And whenever we have these moments that occur with technological change, there is that opportunity to not only do things differently, do things better, but as you mentioned, leapfrog. I mean, this is really an opportunity for, the chairs are being rearranged and, globally in terms of the economy. And there's opportunity to rethink not just the digital sector, right, but it's every sector of the economy that can leverage the technology, in this case artificial intelligence, to compete in ways that it couldn't compete before. And so I'm first of all, delighted to hear more about the Tanzanian AI strategy, because I think a lot of countries aren't actually taking that step of developing strategies. They're developing a strategy that's meaningful, right? Some have, a couple of documents that say we have a strategy, but the challenge is always in implementation. How do we make sure that the technology gets out to people so that it can have an impact? When I was listening to Dr. Mueller's presentation, part of the question I had when I saw the report was, are the problems he identified in terms of internet outages and some of the internet and digital policies, are those the symptoms or the disease? That is, are the problems that need to be fixed, just the technical issues of, well, if we change this law on social media or this tax that's being done here, that will fix the issue? Or are those just symptoms of a political economy that led to those types of decisions? And so to me, one of the most important questions that countries should be thinking about is, what is our motivation for the policies that we're implementing? And how does that reflect in the AI policies that we're going to be pursuing? So I think the countries that are most successful, or going to be most successful with AI, to get to the point of your question here, are those that are really looking at disruptive innovation with AI. Those that are saying, this is going to be a change, it's going to be a big change. It might be a hard change, but here's how we're embracing it with enthusiasm. Here's how we're making sure it's inclusive so that everyone will benefit, and that we're not going to see resistance because there's certain maybe losers in the transition. Here's how we're going to make sure that we are actively addressing all those components: the education and skills, the infrastructure, the training that goes into that, the access to the technology. That we're working on all of those points so that as this opportunity arises, we're able to move forward quickly and efficiently. And so, that's where I think there's some really exciting opportunities. But I think one of the challenges I see is, when we had the internet roll out, countries recognized that they had to invest a lot into it. It wasn't just the private sector. They had to build the infrastructure. It was laying copper and fiber and building the cell towers. With AI, it's going to be something very similar, but it's hard to see it in that same way. It is building data centers, but it's also going to be paying for compute. Those tokens, that's the new, that's like bits today. And we have to figure out how we actually pay for all this. And I think in some cases, we're going to have to think about government subsidies. And we're also have to think about how do we lower costs, just like we see that taxes on internet access can decrease internet use. Anything that raises cost of compute in a country will be a factor. And so that's not just looking at data centers, just looking at the cost of energy, the construction, everything that goes into that, including questions of permitting and siting, everything that goes into building these data centers. So lots of really interesting things governments can do to really work on that entire AI stack.
Thank you so much. Engineer Saberi, would you like to weigh in?
Thank you, Catherine. And maybe I pose a challenge to everyone who is here. AI in Tanzania is still a low-hanging fruit. And there is a lot of areas where the innovators, startups, they have the opportunity to explore and make a tremendous impact for us to understand that AI is a tool and not something to be scared from. So for us, in collaboration with the regulators, the government needs somehow to govern the AI, the adoption of AI, but the intention is not to have a full control of the models, but rather to create the enabling environment for them to create the AI innovation or application that are useful for our community. So, like the issue of regulatory sandboxes, these are very key for us, noting the maturity of Tanzania. So there are several initiatives which are done by regulators. We much appreciate BOT. We are the first one to develop the regulatory sandboxes, but TCRA. But now we are glad several regulators are coming up to make sure they develop this regulatory sandbox. So for the innovators and startups who are here, it's an opportunity. We are creating infrastructure where they can experiment their innovation and avoid those bottlenecks. Maybe sometimes if they enter into the market, they say this, the regulations, they hinder our acceleration or commercialization. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, Engineer Saberi. Just a quick show of hands. How many innovators, entrepreneurs do we have in the room? Can we just see, be proud, raise your hand up high. Okay. How many people working to build this enabling environment that Engineer Saberi talked about? If you don't know if you're building an enabling environment, if you're from a financial institution like Cellcom that offers gateways, you're doing that. If you're working in the legal space, if you're working at any of the commissions, if you're working in infrastructure, that's what we consider enabling environment. Anyone here in any of the sandboxes, TCRA's sandbox or BOT's sandbox? Anyone have a product in the sandbox? Okay. If you go online, Google the Swahilis. Please, I'm not going to tell you about them because you should know them. They're one of the first startups, I think, that have been able to secure an incredible deal through the sandbox and with the regulator. But that also means it opens up an entire pathway for other innovators, right? Very exciting for us. If you don't know them, you need to be knowing them. I'll take one question on what we've talked about so far. I'm going to give you plenty of opportunities for a question, but if you have a question on the foundation, infrastructure, foundation, regulatory environments, if you want Daniel to expand on something that he said. Do we have a question from anyone? Fantastic, we have 2 questions, I like that. Please let me know who you do. Oh, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Engineer Zuberi, and Daniel and Catherine Rose. I think for me, my question was around AI talents. I'm a young person who uses digital platforms to inform ethical and responsible use of AI, but using Swahili, because one of the gaps that I noticed is localization. So as I was going through again our AI readiness report, I noted that as much as there's an acknowledgement of the AI skills gap in Tanzania or talents, most of the talents that have been mentioned are hard skills like statistical analysis, AI engineering, etc., etc. But I see globally there's a very big opportunity of non-technical young people, including myself, that can harness opportunities in other intersectional AI areas like ethical and responsible use of AI. So how can we move forward, and how can we bring others to understand that the AI future-ready opportunities does not rely solely on technical skills? Thank you.
I'm Joan Kimirei, and I just, you talk about AI levels, and you say Tanzania we're in level 3. For some of us who are not in the technical jargon of AI, can you tell us, we're in level 3. Where are we heading? Where are we coming from? Thank you. That's all.
Yes, please.
Okay, thank you for the nice question. If you go to the international framework, like the one they are being developed by IGTC, they have tried to categorize the level of maturity. Almost there are 5 levels of maturity. In maturity 1 up to 3, it's when they measure where if the government or a certain national has policy framework, there are some awareness on AI, there are some of the innovation around. That's why in level 3, they term it as an experimentation maturity. So once you go to a digital space of a certain country, you can see innovation. I don't need to mention some of examples of AI innovation in various sectors, fintech, agriculture, and health. So in Tanzania, we are still in that level. But once, if you want to reach to level 5, where AI now brings a transformative impact, it's when all the AI systems are full integrated. Let's say a certain business or entrepreneur can operate in an environment where the AI system, they can exchange data, they can share data, they can interpret so that he can either do an analysis or a prediction based on a collective mode of analysis. So for us, if you recall the existing agenda where our Madam President, he always speak about mifumo kusomana. Sorry, Daniel. So kama tunataka kwenda kwenye full-fledged AI transformation, first of it ni kwamba mifumo lazima isomane. Kwa hiyo ina maana kama ni mfumo wa sekta ya afya, lazima uzungumze na mwenzie labda wa sekta ya afya from private sector au hata sekta ya kilimo, because we are expecting kwa kutumia AI we need to make a collective decision. Huwezi kusema una base labda na mfumo mmoja kufanya analysis ya data. No, we need a collective means ya kufanya hiyo integration ya mifumo. Kwa hiyo tukifikia kwenye hiyo level, ndio tunasema kweli AI imeweza kufanya ile required transformation kwenye nchi. Kwa hiyo sisi bado tuko kwenye level experimentation. Tunaona innovators wetu hapa wanapotengeneza mifumo, but those mifumo they are still standalone innovation. Nadhani umenipata kidogo. Asante.
Thank you so much, John, for the question. Navina, I'm definitely bringing your question up. Just a quick translation for you, Daniel. Engineer Zuberi talked about the interoperability and how systems speak to each other. At the moment, it's very much a siloed approach. And what we're looking to do, and this is a national, I would say, imperative, is to build a system that's more nuanced, intentional, and more collaborative. Dr. Moses spoke to interoperability this morning, and I think that's something we're definitely working towards so that we're not so siloed. Thank you so much for the questions. So the morning report, and I think it's something that has been in a lot of chat groups that I'm in. If you've been in a chat group this week that's talking about Anthropic and Fable 5 and sovereignty, can you raise your hand? Yeah. I mean, this is something that's really interesting, right? Cutting edge. Asha, I don't know if you did the forum at the right time or Anthropic decided on things at the right time, but it just feels like it's come together. And we talked about this morning when we had coffee, and we said, you know what? We should talk about this, right? So the report looks really hard at data localization, rules requiring data to be held on local servers. And what we've seen through the report is that it raised costs, in some cases reaching billions of shillings for a single firm to build redundant infrastructure without clearly delivering the security that it promises. Daniel, you've done some work with this through your institute, and actually some of your work is cited in the findings. So make sure you read the report. And AI raises those stakes because a competitive AI sector needs cross-border data and computing. So from your experience, for a country like ours that's on level 3, right? Nascent, experimenting, trying to figure out the way forward. For a country that wants both sovereignty and a competitive AI sector, where is our balance? And is there a model in the world that we can draw from that has struck this? Sovereignty without strangling the computer power and data that AI needs.
I think this is where the focus should always be on how do we get more adoption and use of the technology. So, one way of thinking about AI that I think sometimes some governments default to is saying, we want to build everything here, and we want to make sure that we're using the technology that we're building, that we need to develop this digital ecosystem of local compute, local models, local applications, and that's how we're going to be successful. And I think the problem with that is that, especially in a fast-moving area like AI, where if you follow the benchmarks of these models, I mean, it's the curves are incredible, and you're also seeing that those frontier labs are really able to accelerate progress. When you see that happening, you don't want to be using old technology. The most important thing you can be doing is using some of the most, the latest technology. Now, the latest technology doesn't necessarily mean, the most expensive frontier. It might be the latest, highly efficient technology, but it's still, using something that's at the leading edge. And so the goal isn't necessarily to be that leading developer. It's to use what's best out there. And the only way to do that, as you mentioned, is by having that data portability, the ability to, take your data, send it to whichever model is best for this particular application, and then get the results back. And so I think when we look at some of the policy in this area, that's where what is important is that countries look at their regulatory environment and say, are we creating the conditions so that when a company launches a new model, they want to launch in our market. They want to make sure our market is included. What you've seen recently is that even in large economically wealthy countries like in Europe, some of the major US tech companies are not launching their services there because the regulatory environment is so risky for them that they say it's better just to avoid that market for now. So for example, Apple has said they're not going to launch some of the Siri AI products in Europe because of those concerns. And we're seeing this from some of the other companies as well. And so when you look at different markets, the question they should really be saying is not, let's not create regulations in this space. It's, let's follow the models set by the countries that are, having early access. Singapore, United States, Japan, Korea. And what can we do to emulate that so that, when Anthropic releases their new model, we're going to be on that list because there's no concerns that there might be some kind of data protection law or data sovereignty law or something else that creates a business risk for them that they say, you know what, it's just not worth it.
Thank you, Daniel. So I know not all of us are techies in the room. I'm not a techie. I actually work in human capital. So Daniel used the word frontier AI, and I know Engineer Zuberi is going to use that as well. What is frontier AI? It refers to the most advanced AI models in existence, the ones operating on absolute cutting edge of what technology can currently do. Did anybody get up at 3 a.m. to watch some guys race around a track in Monaco recently? No Formula One. In the room, okay, okay. Anyone get up to watch some guys race around a track in a tin car? Okay then. So think of Frontier AI kind of like a Formula One race car versus the regular car that you came in today, right? The everyday AI tools, the chat box that answers customer questions, the app that suggests your next song, those are all in regular cars using reliable, well understood Frontier AI, right? But in this Formula One car that is zipping around that track in Monaco, that's the fastest, most powerful system being built by engineers, pushing limits of what's possible, right? And so that's just like an F1 car, literally. The extra power is exactly why it needs careful rules and oversight. Are we good on Frontier AI technology? So the next time you hear it, you're going to know it's like a Formula One racing car.
Can I just add on there?
Yes.
I think that's a great analogy, but for example, I can drive a regular car. I don't think anyone should get me near a Formula One car. And I would just say for Frontier AI, it is a little different in the sense that anyone can drive it. And so, it's like a Formula One car that we can all drive.
Yeah. You see this? We could all be in Monaco. Thank you, Daniel. So, Bahati, Daniel said something that I think that's really critical, and of course we've heard it this morning. We can't let sovereignty rules choke our computing data and kind of our data AI needs, right? But you're in the ministry and partners that are also in this room, like the Commission, the Data Protection Commission, you're the one who turns all of this into actual practice. You have to weigh that against real concerns: security, trust, and control. When a frontier model arrives, how does the ministry actually balance those three things? Can you walk us through what happens?
Thank you, Caroline. Maybe I can say the vision that we have toward those frontier models of AI. Noting the level of maturity we have, our thinking is that within Tanzania to have a capacity of experts that will be able to create maybe some of AI models, but also to have the ability, let's say when a certain enterprise come and bring its AI solution, we really need to have the human resource that can be able to analyze and predict the risk of a certain AI solution or wherever that is coming. So for now, we are really focusing on building the capacity, the internal capacity of our people here, so that they can really be key players or driver to make sure that the user, because at the end, wherever system it's being put in place here, we must align on the key issues that you said. We need to see how the customers are being protected, the issue of data, the issue of cyber security. So for us, our major concern is that we capacity our people so that they can be able to analyze, even to participate in developing these AI models. And maybe one time we can be the frontier like others. Thank you.
Thank you. Daniel, anything to add?
Yeah, I think developing the capabilities are really important. I think it's important that we think about everyone that can benefit from this. And I think for example, a lot of what AI can do is I mean, as we all know, especially when you're looking at some of the chatbots that are very popular right now, right? It can do translations and editing. It can do website creation. It can do some coding. So I think one of the things we should be thinking about is who is immediately affected by some of the changes and capabilities, and those are probably some of the people we should start with and saying, well, how do we make sure that it's not that we're necessarily training them to be AI developers, but are we training them to use the AI tools in ways that they can stay competitive in the fields that they're already working in? They already have customers, right? And we want to make sure that they're able to continue to compete and that those jobs, those services that they're providing don't go somewhere else, that there's, they're not going to either another country or they're just being replaced entirely. The other part we want to think about is, just the new wave of students that are also coming through our education systems. Are they graduating being, just like we had, internet natives? Are we having AI natives? People that grew up and went to school and have learned this is how we use AI in our schoolwork, and this is now how we're going to be using it in the workplace. We want to make sure that schools are not saying, AI is a problem, don't use it because we're worried about, cheating. We need to embrace it, because I know as an employer, I don't want to hire someone who hasn't used AI. In fact, when I hire new people, I hope they have more experience with AI than the people that didn't grow up with that, and that they should come in and teach us more things. So I just think that idea of, being enthusiastic embracers of the technology is one of the most important things we can do, because that's how you innovate, right? That's when you say, I see that this is enabling new opportunities and embracing that.
Thank you so much. As we go into the question around human capital, Dr. Mboni, I'm wondering if you would be willing to share what you're doing at the university and how how academic institutions are grappling with students using AI?
I had to check the time. It's good morning, everyone. Yes, this is a very interesting question, and it's a question that we are continuously interacting with on a daily. Like it's bothering us, but it's also creating an opportunity for us to think outside the box, to see how we can evolve, because we now know that it's here to stay. So now it's actually forcing us to think about how we assess. It's forcing us. It's like coming to us really hard. It's forcing us to change the way we assess. We are thinking about, are we doing it correctly? Do we even need to have the means, the methodologies in which we use to assess? We have dissertations coming in that we know directly are coming from ChatGPT, and it irks us so much. It really does. Like if you have like 17 students you're supervising, and you know that everything is coming from ChatGPT, and you're tempted to use ChatGPT to assess the ChatGPT, So I do not have answers, Catherine. I don't have answers, because it's something that we are battling with currently. We are discussing it. It's in the front. It's a frontier right now. So we also have a generation at the very top who are born before computers, and they really think that we should be fighting the AI. And then you have the millennials. I think I am a millennial. Do I look like one? And so we have us who are thinking like we are closer to the Gen Z. We understand how they think, and we can give them a break. We can cut some slack. We can actually find ways to help them future ready, for prepare them for the future. So we are also like in the middle, and we are like, so the top will look at us like, what are you talking about? Why you're trying to destroy the institutions we've built for years and years and years? So it's a constant battle, and it's easy to jump off and say, you know what, I give up, but then we're in it, and we're thinking, we don't have answers. Okay, that's the... We don't have answers, but you know what you were doing? Like, I appreciate these conversations, because these conversations will open those doors. Gradually, it will become the norm to discuss them, and then it will be the norm to think of other ways of assessment, because right now you have to get an A for memorizing. So that's like a mindset shift, yeah? We have to change the way we think, and it comes from the bottom, from the top down. And possibly, maybe the millenniums will come up to the top and have better decisions. Thank you.
Thank you so much for bringing your vulnerability and honesty, because it is the human capital question for us is often the elephant in the room, right? How do we build the capital, the talent that we need? One of the UD departments, for example, has changed how they actually write exams. So they're trying to test knowledge versus regurgitation or copy and paste from ChatGPT. And it's interesting, you said you supervise 70 students. Incredible that I'm sure you can tell when something comes out of ChatGPT and isn't your student. So really interesting things around frontier, around what do we build contextually for us. And we can't avoid this people. People are at the heart of the work that we do. If we want to get to Vision 2050, we need to bring people along with us, and we need to have the capital to get there. The 2025 UNESCO assessment found that 60% of Tanzanians still lack basic digital skills, with R&D at about 0.5% of our GDP. And I'm going to say it again, that gap is very highly gendered. With women at just 4.4% of tertiary STEM enrollment against 21.6% for men. And I think, again, we think about Vision 2050, where we want to go. Vision 2050 targets 70% digital literacy. The draft strategy aims for 80%, and we're building from kind of the lower base of 60% in terms of basics. Where does the human capacity actually come from? Who's responsible for building it? Who's responsible for growing it? How fast do we need to be doing this? And how do we make sure that we're not just building it for the people already closest to the technology? Those of us in this room with 2 or 3 smartphones, a tablet, accessing ChatGPT or Claude or Gemini or Copilot, right? Smart TV. So Daniel, can we come down to you now? Can we start talking about building the skills base and who it reaches? You've written quite a bit around the how, right? You've written about modernizing a workforce for the AI era. How does a country build an AI-ready workforce fast enough to matter when most people are really, quite frankly, starting with the basics? And crucially, how do we build it to be broader, like Dr. Mboni mentioned in terms of skills, rather than narrow, so that we don't deepen the gap between the connected and everyone else?
It's a really important question, because I think when we're talking about the future of AI, it has to be inclusive. Digital transformation for a country won't work if it's just benefiting a small group. One of the, I think, most powerful parts of AI is that it actually changes the way we interact with computers. You know, I remember, you know, back in the early 90s when we were just getting internet. And I helped teach some people how to use the internet for the first time who had never used a computer. And one of the biggest challenges, this was, for example, one woman I worked with, she knew how to type, she had used a typewriter, but she didn't know how to use a mouse, which, some Gen Z people, you might not use a mouse anymore, but, that was actually a big thing, just trying to understand, okay, I hold this thing over here and I move it and something's moving on the screen, and that concept, and then the idea you have to click and that opens things, it's very unintuitive for how we interact with technology. Typing commands and going to websites, a lot of that's very unintuitive. AI is changing all of that, right? Now you can interface with a chatbot through SMS. You can use voice to just talk to, Claude or OpenAI's chatbot, and you can actually have just a conversation if you have, high bandwidth. So it really actually changes who can make use of all of this technology. You don't have to even be literate to have access to all of this information, all of this expertise. And that's a really powerful concept. And I think that's a really underappreciated part of what this technology can do for populations. When we're thinking about the digital literacy, it used to be digital literacy required that you had literacy to begin with. It required that you had connectivity. It required that you had a computer before you could even make use of all that. And then you had to learn how to use the computer. Now, if you can communicate, verbally, that's sufficient, and that's really powerful. And so, and it's not just about accessing information. I mean, when you look at some of the trends here, I don't know if people are familiar here with the term vibe coding, but it's the idea that you can develop a website not through going in and writing HTML or JavaScript, but just saying, I would like a website that displays this information, that can sell these products, that uses these images, and you just tell the computer what you want, and it creates it. And then if you want to make changes to it, you describe the changes you want to make, just like you would talk to a web developer who's working on your behalf. And so that concept is incredibly powerful. And you can start doing that for data analysis. You can start doing that for product strategies and marketing. And that is a way to actually make all of this technology accessible to everyone. A small business owner who just needs to use the technology for a very specific application, they don't have to learn AI. They just have to know that this is out there, this is a possibility for them to use, this is how they use it, and it has to be affordable and accessible to them. And so when we're talking about strategy, to me, that's the most important thing. It's not about, some of the guardrails and the ethics. I think all of that will ultimately be important, but it's hard to know how to do all that in advance. The most important thing is how do we get this technology into the hands of people and help them understand it's available and useful for them today. Once you do that, it opens the doors towards all sorts of innovations and uses that none of us could possibly conceive of, because they're very personal, individual to the specific needs of everyone out there.
Thank you, Daniel, and thank you for saying useful, right? It's needed, it's useful, it's accessible. What is something Tanzania has done that probably we did it the fastest? Okay, let's not talk about our neighbors to the north, but we've done it the fastest, right? We took something that was brick and mortar based on human trust and transformed it. Does anyone know what that is? Anyone know what that is besides anyone working in the financial sector? Mobile money, yeah. How did mobile money start? We know there's controversy around that. We won't go into that. But we were sending money to Bibi in the village. How? By giving it to the Konda and trusting that he gets it to Bibi, right? We leapfrogged in terms of technology. Now I can do all my financial, everything on my mobile app. Tanzania is one of the first countries to have an interoperable wallet. We are one of the first. We're actually pioneers. Access, right? Inclusion. We didn't have to be digitally literate to go into that Nokia Tochi menu and send money initially, right? So Farhan, maybe you can share kind of an anecdote out of the work you've been doing and what that looks like, because I think it shows us that this is possible, right? We can leapfrog. We have that basis already. Thank you.
Thank you very much. My name is Farha Mohammed. I head products at Celcom. Just to brief you what Celcom is, we've been in the market for over 20 years. We were the tips before the tips. Maybe just to give you accent of what we do. So before Tanzania Instant Payment Gateway, Celcom is a pioneer of connecting mobile wallets and all banks in Tanzania. That pie was taken by Central Bank of Tanzania, which makes it much better for every Tanzania. When you're in an advanced issue where your pie has been taken, you start thinking differently, right? Because we used to support all the 40 plus banks in Tanzania and all the mobile wallets, bill payments, bank to wallet, wallet to bank, and so on and so forth, and agency banking. We support about 20 banks in Tanzania for agency banking, right? So what leapfrogged was we bought a bank about 1.5 years ago. And when we bought a bank, we wanted to be a first digital bank. When you say first digital bank, we don't want to, our competitor is cash, not other banks, not mobile wallets, because still cash is very dominant in Tanzania. So cost is a huge thing when you're operating a bank or a fintech. How do we leapfrog the cost part to make it accessible from Tanzania to access mobile money? First thing is onboarding. When we went live with Celcom-Pesa, our onboarding right now is less than 3 minutes. Tanzania can get a bank account within 3 minutes at their own space and time, whether it's 3 a.m. in the morning at Dodoma Kijijini, right? As long as you have access to internet and a smartphone. And when we went live, everybody was skeptical and said, no, you can't. Mtanzania hawezi. Yani unamwambia sijui ajifungulia account mwenyewe. They cannot open account by themselves because we've connected to foreign affairs with passport and NIDA. So somebody can, so we have taken our cost of acquisition, which is normally about 25,000 per bank, to 0 because a customer does self-registration, right? And tukaambiwa haiwezekani. By the way, by end of this year, we will be hitting a 1 million customer base within 1.5 years, and that's our target, right? So inawezekana, and we keep on saying that we don't have first digital wa Tanzania. We do have, and we help each other. We have that feeling, and 80% of our customer base, when we call them for onboarding, it's because of family and friends, not our marketing, by the way. Yeah, so inawezekana. Let's say that way. opening an account within 2 minutes, you can have a USD account in seconds. That's the leapfrog that we went through. Thank you very much.
Farhan, thank you for sharing the example. Again, your backend is powered by AI. And I believe your backend is built by Tanzanian developers. Yes. So, owned by and built by Tanzanian devs. Yes, there we go. So I asked Farhan to share the example, one, to show us that it is possible. We have leapfrog before, right? Of course, maybe the context is a little bit different. It's an AI-powered system. Again, 1 million customers coming up in a village. Again, we're thinking the digital literacy needed to be able to open up an account. But how incredible is that? So, Engineer Zuberi, I want to come back to you on this because the National Strategic AI Framework has to deliver, right? And it's 3 parts. I think we're thinking capacity, infrastructure, and then maybe our elephant in the room is language, right? So let's break it down into kind of the first lever, I think, the framework. What regulatory flexibilities, if there are any, are currently being considered to encourage higher learning institutions like the one Dr. Mboni is with, and startups as well, to become engines of AI innovation? And can you speak to some of the efforts like that of the Tanzania AI community that's really been really instrumental in pushing for this as well?
Thank you, Catherine. So far, as I spoke before, we will push the issue of regulatory sandboxes, but we also collaborate with others to make sure even the researchers or innovators, they have access to financing opportunities. Like now, through the Ministry of Youth, we are going to open the window for application of soft loans to ICT startups, almost 5 billion Tanzanian shillings. So it's really, we know the roles of the researchers and innovators in the country, and I'm happy. Dr. Mdeme, unfortunately, he's not here, but through him, we engage in the development of the National ICT Research and Innovation Framework. That framework is full driven from what are the gaps, especially in the academics and these entrepreneurs and ICT startups. But now also we have a project with South Korea. We are going to build a national digital technology institution. It will be in Dodoma, but it almost costs around USD 130 million, and maybe up to 2028 will be in operation. But why are we building the National Digital Technology Institution? It's part of that strategic move to ensure that our people are well equipped in terms of skills. We need to see our youth have hands-on skills, especially on area of emerging technology. So though we are building it as the ministry, but NDTI will collaborate effectively with some of the universities. For now, we have started with Mbeya University. We have SUZA, the State University. We have UDOM, as well as the University of Dar es Salaam. So for the question that my sister asked, we like to share the opportunity. We understand the issue of human capacity. It's not only the ICT experts, it's the all chain, all actors, from the policymakers, the ICT experts themselves, but also the public. They need to be well informed and engaged in this transformation. And this can be done only through skills, various skills program. And if she knows, we have a very much collaboration with Innovation for I, Dr. Eric, I always call Kitonga AI. He's doing a greater job to to give this digital literacy, especially on AI, and to some of the ministry. So I'd like to welcome her, come to our office, and we can have conversation and see where are we going to collaborate.
Thank you, Engineer Zuberi. Does the framework include anything around the enabling layer? Compute, connectivity, infrastructure, anything that allows talent to work here rather than leave? Does the framework address that?
Yeah, it do. Like I can say now, through the Ministry of Education, we are going to have, in partnership with ITU, we are going to strengthen on issue of connectivity, especially in schools, and maybe starting this financial year of 2027, around 500 schools will be provided with internet access. But also on digital content, we always collaborate through ICTC and other private company. We real much, as I said, the issue of digital literacy, it's a cross-sector collaboration. So for us, we have our role as policymakers. We also have a role to ensure we have adequate digital infrastructure, but we need to shake hands with other partners. Thank you.
I don't even have to turn around, Engineer Zuberi, to see that Iku Lazaro of Shule Direct has got the hugest smile on her face from hearing 500 plus connected schools. Don't even have to turn around for that one. Thank you. Before you put your mic down, we have an asset, I think. I think it's an asset, Kiswahili, right? And the framework is very intentional about language, not just computing language, but Kiswahili in that sense. So, and it treats Kiswahili as a strategic advantage, not as a barrier. A Kiswahili large language model would put AI in the hands of the majority who think and work in Kiswahili, not just a few English speakers that are connected, right? And this matters for gender, this matters for inclusion, this matters in terms of closing the rural gaps that we currently have, because language is often the first barrier. So practically, where is the Kiswahili LLM? How does it work? What is the need to succeed? And just out of curiosity, does building AI in our own language actually change who gets to participate? And is that language going to be something that leapfrogs for us and helps us to push forward like we did with mobile money?
Thank you, Catherine. Yeah, and I can recall maybe two weeks or 3 weeks ago, we had a meeting with various key stakeholders who we know they have much contribution in creation of these Swahili datasets. As I said, Bakita, he's leading, he's having almost 64 Swahili datasets, but there are some of the research institutions, they also own some of Swahili datasets. So for us at the ministry, we are planning to ensure that all these datasets are standardized and they can be open to people who want to develop this AI model. So that is our focus, and we are real open to collaborate to anyone. But to enhance that availability of Swahili datasets, as I said, we also need to create shared infrastructure, the GPUs, to some of the research institutions, and we are looking for some financing so that maybe at least 10 GPUs can be available to research institutions so that they can be the source of generating these Swahili datasets.
Some of us in the room aren't techies. What's a GPU? For those of us in the room that are just thinking, okay, these acronyms are too much now.
GPU, jamani,
Yeah, but can you explain? Why is that important for us, though? Because it's a big ask, right? 10 GPUs. What is that going to mean for us practically? What is that going to mean for innovators?
Maybe explain in Swahili.
Yeah, sure.
Wakaelewa. Ni kwamba tunapozungumzia AI, data processing ni tofauti. Inahitaji infrastructure tofauti na zilizopo. Kwa hiyo hizi ni servers kubwa ambazo zitawezesha kuwa na hizo capacity za kuprocess AI data. Sasa ukija kwa sasa hivi unakuta some of the universities wanazo, lakini ni ndogo na wanatumia kwa matumizi yao. Kwa hiyo sisi tunatakiwa tuwa capacitate wawezi kuwa na hizo infrastructure, kwa sababu wao kila siku wana generate data. Uwezi ukasema tunatengeneza labda AI models zinazotumia Swahili voice wakati hujamwezesha huyu mtu kuwa na dataset ambayo nikiongea Kiswahili inaweza ikafanywa computation. Kwa hiyo they are just infrastructures, big savers, labda kwa lugha rahisi.
Thank you. Daniel, can I ask you to weigh in, coming in with your kind of like global knowledge lens also, and now having been in the hot seat for the last hour and 15 minutes around human capital development in particular, and also if you have something to weigh in around the Kiswahili LLM, that would be incredible.
Yeah, I was testing Google Translate on the Swahili, and I can see why you want to invest in a local LLM. You know, first of all, I think it's incredibly important that every community is thinking about what are the data sets that we need to make available so that we can be empowered in the AI economy. This is actually work that I think predates the current conversation on AI, where we've worked on this idea of everything from data for development to this concept that we talked about in the United States of data poverty. Just like we have poverty across the United States, there were a lot of pockets where we saw data deserts, where basically there were areas of the country, of our country, where you didn't have communities well represented. And that idea, of course, is applicable globally, where rural areas, for example, sometimes don't have data collected about them. For example, you might see some initiatives for smart cities, but they're in highly populated areas and not unpopulated areas, or less populated areas. And so when I think we're talking about, for example, language data, that's a huge part. We also think about all the other data sets that people need so that they can be well represented, whether it's health data that will enable advances in health AI to be applicable to everyone, geospatial data, weather data. There's so many areas where we have to think about how are we building the data infrastructure, not just the compute infrastructure, but the data infrastructure, so that we can actually apply this technology in ways that benefits everyone. So I think that's a key part. Another point I want to add in here is the importance of the industry and university partnerships for the innovation that we'll see in this space, especially if we want to see startups emerging. I think one of the most important things we've seen from some of these innovation studies as a field is that no matter where you're looking in the world, it's always this partnership between the educational system, the research system, and the industrial systems. There has to be linkages there. You want to make sure that research that's happening isn't happening in isolation, that's tied directly to workforce development, it's tied directly to specific local industrial challenges, because that's how you get those developing, growing innovation hubs where, again, it doesn't matter what the sector is, but you want the researchers to be figuring out how do we solve problems that industry needs solutions for, and how do we train the next workers, the students, so that when they graduate, they're equipped with these skill sets. So they're going out and they're either starting new companies or they're going and working in these companies, and they're helping these companies be more competitive. That's how you see these innovation ecosystems develop. And that's what you really want, I think, at the national level, governments to be thinking about. What are the core sectors we're going to be competitive in? So for example, it's clear that Tanzania has this leadership position right now in digital payments and mobile money. And so the question is, well, how do you grow that? How do you make sure that that's something that's not just used domestically, but can be something that's exported? And when you're talking about the sandbox model, that's where you add in not just industry and universities, but then of course government as that really important player to say, we're going to help make sure that as you innovate, we're changing the rules along with you to help support those types of growth. Because I think, at the end of the day, the question about will talent stay, it's not just, can you keep them here because they're jobs, but can you keep them here because they're excited to innovate here because government's working with them and they're not creating barriers. And I think that's something that's really important. And we see this kind of mobility all over the world, where I think countries, and even within countries, different cities, different states, they compete to say, can we attract that talent because government's willing to be an active partner? And so I think that's one of the areas where I think all countries should be thinking about what are we doing to make sure that you're drawing in as much talent as possible to be competitive.
Thank you so much, Daniel. We will open up for questions or comments. Awesome. Ms. Holmes? No, please do.
Thank you both. This has been actually a really interesting and enlightening conversation. One of the areas, Daniel, you talked about not even needing to be literate to use AI and using voice, which sparked some ideas in my head about how it could apply in this context. So I'm just curious, and it's for both of you, and maybe this is already happening here. But I think, we talked earlier this morning about how 70% of Tanzanians are in agriculture. And I think there's probably a lot of knowledge in the global universe of agriculture that is not necessarily accessible to a small farmer in a specific part of the country. So are there applications where somebody could just talk to their phone and say, how is El Nino going to impact my farming schedule this year? They may have heard about it, but then what kind of adaptations should I make to ensure a good harvest this year? Or, okay, fertilizer prices are up. What are some alternatives to what I've traditionally used? So I'm just curious of applications that, in that way, that could be useful for the smallest player in the market. Thank you.
I'm happy to start with a quick answer.
Yeah. No, I was just going to mention some that are in the market. Swahili AI is one of them. Kilimo AI is another. There's also Farmerline and Arifu as well. So there are some apps on the market. Interestingly enough, a large, no longer in existence American aid funding organization also put out 3 years ago a publication where they listed all the AI tools available for farmers, and that playbook might still be available online. Sorry, go ahead, Daniel.
I was just saying, in terms of specific types of applications that I've seen being developed, for example, are the idea that you can give a farmer or farm worker just a mobile phone, and they can snap a picture of a crop that appears to have some kind of disease or issue that they might not know how to resolve. And with that, they can send that to an AI system, it can process it, and not only tell them what the issue is, but how to resolve it, and help give them those steps about here's the local person you can go to add this type of fertilizer, or this is the type of treatment you should do if it's a disease or a pest. And that type of intervention is, I think, incredibly powerful, especially when you think about, the type of impact that an unknown, crop disease can have on a farmer's income. So those types of applications really powerful, and also an area where, it can even be a shared device, right? You don't necessarily need to have a device that you own, you just need to have access to a device that you can send a picture of and get it in and get the answer. So those types of things, I think, are, again, really powerful.
Some interesting work, I think, in the technology space also, so in the health sector using AI. I think it's called Saratani AI, if I'm not mistaken, but working with doctors and health institutions to be able to detect cancer early on. Really, I think, cutting edge, kind of interesting things. SOA University, if I'm not mistaken, has an online repository on agricultural tools, technology, and AI tools that probably goes back as far as 2015 or 2016. If that's of interest of anyone to look up, they have an online repository as well. Engineer Zuberi, would you like to weigh in?
Yeah, but I would like to speak in Swahili because there is an opportunity.
Can we just wait for Daniel to turn on his translation?
Are you done? Oh, kuna fursa. Ukiangalia tulivyoandaa mkakati wa AI, they tried to highlight the potential areas where we as Tanzania we can transform. Kwa hiyo ukienda kwenye ile AI strategic framework, at the end of the pages, kila sector tumejaribu ku highlight potential areas where people can innovate and make that transformation. Kwa hiyo today here we are speaking about agriculture, but there are very green areas where my young sisters and can make an impact. Kwa hiyo wajifunze kusoma documents because kule ndo kuna fursa nyingi. Kwa wakipitia mkakati, they will see the potential areas where for us we want them to innovate using AI.
Thank you. So 2 website, mawasiliano.go.tz, is one you should be looking at. And then for the national guidelines on AI, you want to go to moe.go.tz as well. Anyone else with a question or a comment? Anyone else? Thank you. Please tell us, don't forget to tell us your name and what you do, and then your question.
Hi, everyone. My name is Goodness Thomas. And I think it's kind of a comment, because when you're saying questions, I was like, it's not a question. So, so yeah, my comment is when we're trying to integrate the knowledge of AI and IT stuff. So from my experience, most of us, we learned computers in school or switching off, and we were drawing and stuff, but people do so much stuff now. But I think that's one of the places where obviously we have to start. It's the only way we could try to cover the gap of like letting people know everyday use of AI. So I'm thinking if we start maybe with primary schools and secondary schools. I was actually very happy to hear the internet is going to 500 schools, but now I'm thinking maybe you could have programs going to these schools as well, where you have students learning how to use AI in everyday life. I feel like that could be one way you could do it. And then we could go to university and we could have conversion courses, because I think most of us, we don't have the background, and most of the courses want you to have the background in IT, for example, if you want to do a master's, right? So I'm nervous, speaking too fast. But so I think one of the best ways is having courses where, okay, maybe you don't know anything about AI, but there's this master's course in AI you could convert from. Let's say you did a bachelor's in agriculture, but you could do agriculture with AI as a master's, just to make sure. Yeah, something like that.
Thank you, Goodness. Can I start with you, Engineer Zubir, and then move into you, Daniel, if you have a response as well?
She is right, and I love your recommendation. That's why, first of the thing, even at primary level, we need to make sure that those schools, they have the infrastructure. That is what we are doing, that they should be live, they should have access to internet. So that is the first priority for us at the ministry. But we always do teach on training courses on AI. Through UCSAF, if you know UCSAF, the Universal Communication Access Fund, they usually run the ICT courses program in various schools. So she's right, and there are some of the efforts which we are currently doing.
Before I come to you, Daniel, maybe I can just add, there's a couple of sites you could go to check. So the Ministry of Education, Science and Technology, when they looked at the National Education Strategy 2024-25, I think into 2030, and then the national guidelines for education, artificial intelligence and education, lays out in the strategy actually some key areas. So there's 7 core pillars. I know Dr. Moses talked about 5 this morning, but MOEST has 7. So curriculum integration is really important from primary, emerging technologies, AI, big data, data analytics, robotics is another one we're looking at. Human resource capacity, so upskilling teachers. If you get a chance today or tomorrow, please talk to Engineer Zuberi, talk to Iku from Shule Direct. They've done, I think it's more than 10 years of work now, working with teacher training colleges to build capacity of teachers around digital and ICT skills. So a lot of learning from Iku and her team. And then digital infrastructure, content and assessments as well. And so there's a lot happening. Definitely go online. I can see we're going to give the last word to our guest, Daniel, who's come all the way from Washington. So Daniel, you have the last word.
Thanks. I agree with your comment there. I would say, part of this exactly is going to happen by comments like your own. There has to be demand for it, right? At the end of the day, when people are deciding where they want to get their education, they should be demanding that AI be part of the curricula. They should be demanding that AI and computers be used, throughout to help teach them. It'd be just like if you were looking at enrolling in a university and they said, well, we don't have teachers in our classroom, or we don't use books, and you would say, well, I'm definitely not going there. How am I possibly going to get the best education without that? You should be saying the same thing with AI. And I think right now, one of the challenges, to go back to one of the other comments too, was that there's so much focus on how do we evaluate the students and the risk that AI creates there, the challenges that AI creates there, as opposed to saying our primary responsibility as educators is to educate. It's not to evaluate the students. Like that is an important part, but the real the competition in a sense in higher education or even primary and secondary education should be about what's the best way to educate these students? How can we meet different individual student needs? And how can we improve that over time? And AI can certainly help with all of that. And so I think if we embrace AI as a learning tool, instead of worrying about how it impacts evaluation, that's what we should focus on in the short term. In the long term, we have to figure out, of course, how do we differentiate from those who are the best in the class versus those that aren't. But that's a different problem. So let's use AI to improve education. I think demanding it is the first way to start, just like we would demand it in healthcare.
Thank you so much. Can we give our experts a round of applause? I just want to double check before we exit the stage. Are we taking a group photo? No? Okay, perfect.
Do you want a group photo?
Do we want a group photo? Sure, we'll
With
take
which
one.
group?
This group.
All right. Ladies and gentlemen, a round of applause to Catherine Barreto as well. Catherine, I truly am sorry. The other group is already out. Some will want to come in, and I believe most of us would also want to move on to the next agenda, but yeah.
Oh.
Go ahead.
Okay, I think